Hey everybody, this is E Squared Productions, and you're watching an off-the-cuff session with T and me.
I'm
I'm me.
I'm
I'm also known as Carol.
yeah, and people call me Tanya sometimes.
Yeah, T is better. T's
Yeah,
easier. Less
yeah,
syllables, right? Don't have to focus on
exactly.
so much.
Although it
But
brings up so many questions for people, but it's just T. Just call me
yeah,
T.
lots of questions I can imagine, especially in today's day and age.
Mhm.
Interesting. Yeah, my mind is going into lots of imagination there. Well, we were talking just before we hit record this morning about judgment. uh, about self-judgment, about judgment of others. Have you ever heard anybody say things like, "Oh, I'm too old," or "I'm too young," or "I'm too inexperienced," or "I'm too tired."
I'm too broke.
"I'm too broke." That's one of the favorites, right? "I can't afford this." These are all what I refer to, what we refer to as judgments.
Mhm.
And they could be right or they could be wrong. But how often we actually make these judgments about us. Like this is something that actually defines us. It's part of who we are, which some of the work that we've been doing in the last few years kind of steers us in a bit of a different direction. And it says that that isn't who we are. We are not those feelings. We are not those judgments. We'll get into breaking this down as we go here. Tanya's got a really a hot one that she's working on right now when it comes to judgment. Tanya, do you want to take it from
Oh,
here?
yeah. So last week we collectively, a group of women and us pirates, the rebel
Pirates.
inside, or we did some Calegoing. So Kyle Cease has something called Calego. It's do you remember? And getting that energy as if we're already living it, as if we're already experiencing that, right? So every morning last week, 7 a.m., we got together and said, do you remember when? And we had all of these grandiose plans and dreams, and by day 4 I was like, yeah, fully in.
Yeah.
I can feel that. It was electrifying, right? I can feel it now, actually. And then the next day, I got this offer that came across my desk, and it was so profound. It was so mind blowing. And it was exactly what I had asked for. It was exactly what I had asked for, big, grandiose abundance. And do you think, I mean, immediately I said yes. And I was in that electricity and I was in that, I was like, yes, this is so amazing.
We were actually like, watch your ears, folks. Fuck yes.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Right?
I mean, it was just so alive, right? And the more that I sat in it, the more this guilt and shame came up that, well, I can't afford it. Who do I think I am? What is my mom going to say? All of the things and these conditions that came upon me that started weighing really heavy. And then the question, became, well, like, are you coming? Like, is this a yes? Do we get a yes yet? And I could feel my heels digging in to the proverbial ground, right? And I was like, no, that was too fast. That's too much. I can't possibly. Who am I to take that? Who am I to accept that? Who am I to receive that? I haven't done enough work yet. I don't have enough money, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
Honestly. But it kept me down all weekend. I allowed it to weigh me down. And I came up with a million reasons why not. When the immediacy of the offer and the opportunity that came to me through my manifestation, right? It was a
Through
direct
your
pull.
manifestation. It was a direct manifestation. It's like, I want this. Okay, here you go. And then you're like, whoa, what?
I'm like, that's too easy. That couldn't possibly be. It was just too easy.
Of course.
And that's happened to me many times, right? Like my
And that's a judgment too. It's too
absolutely.
easy is a judgment.
It is. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Amazing how we keep ourselves bound
Small.
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 And that's exactly what happened for me because when when I was in the F yeah mood, it was like nothing could stop me. I was bigger and bolder than I ever thought possible. And it was like, yes, this electrifying feeling, this is what life is about. This is what I want more of. And then the conditional thoughts and feelings and having a conversation with my mom, right?
Mhm.
Oh, well, what about this? And oh, well, what about that? And I know that my mom means well. I know that these people that we talk to, our partners, our kids, our workmates, whoever, those things, that they bring across as things that we might want to consider sometimes can actually spark the fear, right?
100%. Though all of these people, nobody close to us really wants us to hurt. They are actually celebrating with us, but they have their own smallness that they're living with. And so all of a sudden they're layering their own considerations while they're in support of you.
Which doesn't
Right?
feel very supportive, right? And I know that I do this as a mom, right? So it's not anything that my mom's doing wrong. She's bringing her own stuff to the table, right?
Yeah,
And even
exactly.
though, she did say, and I will admit that this was surprising, she said, don't half-ass it, which was something we learned through the Matthew McConaughey stuff that we're doing, right? So when he wanted to go to acting school instead of being a lawyer, and his dad was paying for school, so he had to kind of pass it by his dad. He said, well, don't half-ass it, son. And he said those were the 4 most important words that he could have heard, right? But there was a long pause and a long silence, which was probably filled with a lot of trepidation around what could have been said in those moments, right? Because my mom has her own successes and her own failures and her own life experience and her own story, and I respect my mom deeply. So it made it really difficult to say yes to something when there are all of these considerations that I might have to think about. But in that moment, I went from feeling like yes to, oh gosh, what am I doing? Oh no, should I?
Yeah. Well, what you just said reminds me of us having children.
Mm,
When we thought we weren't ready and how are we going to do this? And I remember somebody, I don't even remember who it was. It may have been a parent, but
mhm,
somebody a long time ago said, children make a way for themselves.
yeah.
How would this gift that you've been given not make a way for itself?
Mm-hmm. And I got a definite indication of that yesterday. I went, sat outside in nature, which is something I need to do more frequently because I work and go to school from home. So I don't usually find that time. And it became very clear to me that I need that connection
Mhm.
in my soul. And I pulled cards, right? And the cards that I pulled were 2 out of those 3 cards were things that I'd never pulled before, right? So
Mhm.
alliance, assurance, and and privacy or secrecy. So keeping things a little closer to my chest instead of blabbing them all over the world, which is a tendency when I get excited about something, right? The promoter in me is like, yes, Kelly Ho, let's go. But I think that I talk about it out there so that I can gain the momentum from the outward pouring of you should or you shouldn't, right? So
It's kind of like a survey. Hey guys, I need your support to make sure that I know what I'm doing. I know what's right for me, and I'm going to get all of that from you.
yeah.
I did that too. I remember I did that so much. I remember as a teenager, my mom and dad got me my own phone line because I spent so much time on the phone. Anytime I came up against something, it was I had to call somebody. I didn't have that answer inside of me. I didn't trust that inside of me. Oh,
That was a
what a difference.
conditioning though, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so there are these layers that are still intertwined no matter how much work we're doing. Here we've been practicing this stuff for like 30 years now. And this stuff still shows up in our experience. This is not about being perfect, folks. This is about excellence. This is really about embracing and owning who we really are and loving ourselves right where we're at
Mhm.
with all of that stuff, you know?
And that includes the things that we measure or or indicate as bad,
Judge is bad. Yeah.
right. And I think for so long I thought, God, those shadow pieces of myself I need to cut out in order to be good or be good enough. And I've come to understand in my last year of prac that, all of those things are a part of me and they
Mhm.
all serve some sort of function,
Yeah.
right? And so tenderly meeting those pieces and parts of myself instead of negating or being angry and chastising those parts of myself that I have been chastised for,
Yes.
usually from others, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we try to make up for those places of hurt by
Mhm,
going back out to the fields and
mhm.
seeking approval from
Yeah. Well, and
uh,
approval in our world is a big deal, right? I mean, you think
right now. Yeah.
likes and loves and all of this thing, and the opposition, and oh god, it's a little crazy, I must say. But we're constantly looking for our worth in some other form, right? How about now? Can I have it now? And the practice for me has really been about owning my worth, knowing my worth when I walk through the door, knowing my worth when I open my eyes in the morning, right? That I don't have to do anything in order to earn that.
Yeah, you
And
just
that I
are
have
love.
everything that I need. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that piece around manifestation being easy, right? I'm powerful.
I am
Stepping into that,
powerful.
right?
Yeah.
Stepping into that and owning that and knowing that everything I've ever needed has come into place, like you said, right? Like everything that I've experienced thus far has been in service to where I find myself right now.
Yes.
Why
Good,
not?
bad, and otherwise as we judge it, right?
I know. Well, and
Yeah.
judgment is so easy because it's conditioned. We're conditioned to believe that we need to think about all of these reasons why not.
Yeah. Well, and I think that a really good way to practice not sticking to your judgment, the
Mhm,
judgy self, is to actually just watch
mhm,
yourself as
mhm,
if you were watching a movie.
mhm,
Because it is something that's outside of us. It isn't us. It's
mhm,
not really who we are. Who we are is whole. Who we
mhm,
are is love. Like that is we come into this world whole, complete, and we forget this.
mhm,
As we go, there are things that happen, there are people that say things, there are people that do things, there are circumstances that take place that trigger us, that cause us pain, trauma, emotion, and we decide that those pieces of pain are who we are. They
mhm,
become us. They become us in the sense that there's always this background story, this background voice that can be running the show that helps us when those really amazing things come our way. Initially, my first reaction is, yes, I just won the lotto.
mhm,
And then when, sitting back and going, wow, like, oh my gosh, what about this? What about this? And all this fear and all this stuff that I've ever heard, ever been told, conscious or unconscious, it's all back here somewhere. And sometimes that's the stuff that drives my ship.
mhm,
And and I know that it doesn't work well for me.
mhm,
So really trying to detach myself from that and go, wow, this resistance that I'm feeling, like I'm feeling something inside. What is that? Ick. I call it the ick. For me, ick is a great way to describe it because
yeah,
it isn't love. It's the opposite of love in my
right,
experience.
right.
And so, what is this ick? Where does this come from? Where did this begin? Where did this definition begin for me? And how can I unravel that story, releasing it so that I can just be okay with this lotto win?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I tell you, uh, tapping into my spirituality and really get in touch with, I actually do know.
Yeah.
Somewhere underneath all of the layers of the guilt, shame, and conditioning, and all of those messages that are, I'm not enough, there's something inside of me that knows that it's the right choice at the right time and that it's my next right step, even though no one else is doing it and there's no big crowd, hoopla and everything else. And that there's these conditions also that I see that happening, that I feel a fear of missing out on
Oh,
what's happening over there, right? But knowing that that's not where I'm at right now. It's not
yeah.
a not there forever, but it's a not right now. And
Yes.
there's a longing that to belong.
Mhm.
There's a longing to be a part of, but there is a clear compass going in a different direction for whatever reason. I don't know what. And it's the story of my life, right?
It
Like
has.
is to forge this path aside from where everyone else is having a friggin' party, right? And I'm like, but hang on a second, I really just want to belong. And the conditioning of leadership and what it has meant and stepping further into that and ownership of that piece, right? Even though it may not look the same as other people, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Mhm. It's true.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
true.
big subject matter, and I know that we're not alone in this, right?
No, I mean, I think of so many times when I've judged myself as I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough experience,
Mhm.
or I'm not a good daughter or I'm not a good mother, and how when I'm in the energy of that, and I'm really good with my imagination. And so I will like literally replay the tape about 1,000 times.
Mhm.
And so when I do that, how do you think I end up feeling?
Mm.
I feel the ick. Like I am like literally like to the brim with ick.
Mhm.
And so if we have this powerful tool called imagination, and I get to choose what I'm thinking, I'm really the only person that does get to have power over that. What if I were to change that story into these really positive, really heartfelt, really warm, loving, caring ways about myself? What if I just flipped the script and told a different story and imagined that instead? I know already just saying that, I feel bigger. I feel like I'm already expanding and I've created more space for more good stuff.
Mm.
It's really it's so simple.
Yeah. Simple and complex.
It is simple, and yeah, it's why we have this tendency as mankind, as humankind, to stay miserable,
Mhm.
to rob ourselves of the joy that is available to us. And so much of that is a self-judgment piece. It comes
Yeah.
from some sense of lack.
There's it's interesting because in that conversation with my mom, there was so much limitation.
Ugh.
So much limitation, right? And I'm like, but I see other people successfully accepting their abundance and they're living what appears to be pretty great lives. And I think to myself, well, why not me?
Mhm.
Why not us? There's a key in there that we haven't quite unlocked yet, but I think we're like circling the drain there of pulling the plug on something that's really important. Around, yeah, why not us?
Yeah, why
And
not
I think
us?
that was the decision in when I read the messages yesterday. It was kind of like, okay, you know what? Like the question you have been asking, here is the answer. This is your sign. It was like, okay, you know what? It couldn't get any more blatant, yet there was still some reservation. It wasn't a complete heck yeah. It wasn't a complete, like it was the visceral experience in the beginning. There was still some conditions in between me and the success that I was saying, but what if? And but what if this? And but what if that?
Mhm.
And I'm closer, but I can definitely feel the hesitation as well as the pull.
Mm.
And so it feels a bit gritty in this place right now.
And so what comes up for me as I hear you say that is the gritty related to other people.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So if this was a
Not wanting to
decision,
disappoint, right? Like, what
exactly.
if I disappoint? What if I actually can't afford? What if, you know what I mean? Like those conditions of what is someone going to think about me? And how will this affect them? Right?
How will this affect them? And so we make other people's other people's feelings more important than our own when we do that.
Yeah. Wow. Whew. Yeah.
That is something that I grew up in a family where my mom was she was dysfunctional in lots of ways, and I love her, and everything is exactly perfect, as Tanya said. Like everything leads me to who I am now, and I wouldn't trade who I am now for anything.
Yeah.
Um, but there was this constant need for me to consider her feelings before my own, and I spent most of my life doing that. And so now in my, later in life, my 40s, I think is when I kind of started to look at that as like, wait a minute, how about how I feel
Mm-hmm.
first?
Mm-hmm.
We need to be whole here first before we can be in service to anybody else. Oxygen mask, it's there's all these different ways to say it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's about just keeping that in our awareness when we're in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and bring it to the conscious, right?
Yeah,
What you're talking about is a conscious effort or a conscious
it's
decision,
true.
right?
Yes.
And we run on
Yeah.
autopilot quite often through our days. So to bringing that into the forefront and then making a decision based on what it is that we need. And I have made plenty of decisions in my life that were like, not popular with my
Oh,
family.
yes.
Not pop-
And but were they made consciously, and were they made like for the, were they supporting a bigger picture for you?
yes, they were.
Yeah.
And there was something inside of me that was like, but you know that this is
Yeah.
the direction. And everybody's going, what are you doing? What are you doing? What do you mean? You couldn't possibly. You can't. You shouldn't. And I don't know how many times I nearly listened to those voices instead of the intrinsic innate knowledge and compass that I have. And every time that I did choose something off the beaten path, so to speak, it has been in service. I can think of many occasions where it was like, yes, that was the right decision, and there's all kinds of evidence to back up the fact that that although the people who were voicing an opinion in opposition were coming from a place of love and kindness and concern, obviously, but they don't have my mind, they don't have my thoughts, they don't have my heart, they don't have my life, right? So sometimes we have to make decisions that may go against what someone else thinks. And ultimately, I think this has been a really big thing with having kids too, understanding that we will make our own mistakes and we will learn from them. Like, my kids don't always do everything I think that they should do. I know that they feel the same way about me. And yet it's not my life.
Yeah.
And it's not their life, right? And so I get to define what that looks like. And I think, like you said, that being the watcher of our thoughts and really questioning, what is it about me that I'm questioning my worth in these ways, and this guilt and shame and conditioning, wah, 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 wah.
Well, as you were talking, it reminded me of a time in my life so my mom was an alcoholic. She didn't always drink, but there was a good chunk of my upbringing where she was a drinker, and even how she drank changed over the years. I may have mentioned this in another episode, so if you're hearing this again, I apologize, but it's kind of applicable here in the sense that my mom, she kind of expected the rest of us in the family, like my dad and my brother and I, to cover her. So when there was a family event and she was too drunk to attend, she just wanted us to tell the story that she wasn't feeling well. Now, I'm pretty certain that the whole family was aware of what was really going on, but nobody ever talked about it, right? Because we were afraid. I was afraid of being judged. Like, what's my family going to say about me supporting this? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we went to one family event. I think I was in my early 20s or mid 20s or something. And we went to, it was my Nana's house, and the kids were there, and I walked in and everybody asked, well, where's Jan? And I, without even batting an eye, I said, she has made drinking more important than being here today. And everybody's jaw hit the floor.
Of course it did.
And in that moment, what became more important to me was to tell the truth, because I'd been a liar. I'd become a liar for a long time, covering my mom's actions. And that's a whole other episode.
Subject,
and no pain there. Like I've really come to terms with a lot of this, so I'm able to talk about it without emotion, because I've done a lot of work and kind of done a lot of healing on this. But I think it's really important, because I was so afraid after it came out. Oh shit, my mom is gonna lose it on me. And now I've got to attend to my family and my dad, and now I've opened this whole can of worms, and oh, here goes Carol again. And
how dare you?
How dare I expose my mom? So my mom's feelings had been so much more important than my own. And in that moment, I said, that's it, no more.
Yeah.
And that was a humongous shift in our family dynamics going forward. It was a big shift in my relationship with my mom too.
Well, you're talking about family systems, right?
Yeah.
So even though some of these things weren't necessarily overt, they weren't like, you have to do this. It was just a known expectation, right?
Yeah.
And yet, then there's some of us that come along and shake
it up.
Shake it up and say, those patterns actually don't make sense to me. And I'm not willing to buy into the lie, tell the lie, act on behalf of, and pretend that everything is fine. When it's not, right? My son said the other night, he's like, why do we always have to be on this healing path? Why do we have to concentrate so hard on this healing stuff? I'm like, well, I don't know, like by my estimation, it's pretty much, I think, the point. And as long as you have that activation energy inside of you, it just means there's more work to do. Well, why can't we just have fun and adventure and just, I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like you could combine the two. And let's remember that everyone has their own interpretation of what fun and adventure looks like. Maybe yours is skydiving and mine is going for a walk in the park. Like there's a spectrum to everything, right? And who am I to say that you should or shouldn't? And who are you to say that I should or shouldn't, right?
Right.
We're constantly looking around us, particularly based on our family system, what were the rules that we had to play by, whether they were implied or overt. And then we all sort of do our little dance and things go along as they do. But, what I know about you is you're a change agent, right? So you're just like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. And like you said, even though the outcome could have been disastrous, actually, it actually strengthened your relationship.
It strengthened my relationship with me.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the very first times that I ever stood up to my mom as a whole person. Even though she wasn't there, she got the backlash. There was a lot of power in that for me. And I reflect on other communications that had to be really tough conversations. Like I 2 whole months I didn't talk to my mom because she was just living below the line, as I refer to it. She was nasty. She was doing everything. She was like fishing, trying everything she could to hurt me, to cause me to fail, to plunder, to fall apart. She didn't want to play by my rules.
Yeah.
And as a whole individual, there was no space for anything but, no, this is now, I'm an adult, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And you can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Very powerful. So I think that was the first step, that moment in time back at Nana's house that day. And my cousin Michelle talks about it. And she's like, I remember everybody just going, "What?"
I mean, the funny thing is, they all likely knew.
I think so. Like
there's some level of them that probably knew that something wasn't quite right when your mom's constantly sick when there's a family gathering, right? Like, and they all are a part of the marionette, I guess, like the music and marionette that goes along with. And so their shock and awe was, oh my God, somebody's telling the truth. Like we don't do that around here.
Right. And that was exactly it.
Everything's fine, don't you know?
Yeah. That's it. That's actually what it is. And I think that I've always been afraid of my voice. Okay, there's so much that goes into this. Talk about judgment, self-judgment. I used to be really thin. I was like 6 feet tall and 100 pounds in grade 7, and then by the end of grade 8, I was like 6'3" in grade 8, and I still wasn't. I was tiny, right? I was skin and bones. And because of that, I had my Adam's apple. I know girls aren't supposed to have Adam's apple. That's a huge judgment. But I had this Adam's apple that I was so self-conscious about. And it actually was something that people would comment about in my later 20s and stuff like that. I was so self-conscious about it. And they were like, oh, you're just a trans. And people would say things about me, and it really bothered me that I didn't feel feminine. I didn't look, anyway, that whole thing. Where was I going with this? Self-judgment. Anyway, I've been really hard on myself. I've been so hard on myself for so many
we
years.
make up at that point in time that there's something wrong with us, right?
Well, yeah, I'm not like everybody else.
Yeah, right.
I was like a giant. I was an Amazon woman. I mean,
well, and to the point where you used to try and
crunch
down, right? Yeah. And actually change your physical appearance due to outside opinion and not fitting in anywhere.
Right.
You and I are misfits and always
totally
and attract the other misfits. So carry on.
And my voice, this is, I guess, where I was going, was that my Adam's apple always bothered me, but that is literally what helps give me sound here to some degree, right? It's connected to this throat, which is I am here to use my voice, and how often I've muted myself in fear of judgment, in my own insecurities. I literally was raised on soap operas. Okay. I didn't have control of the television ever.
Yes,
My
you
mom
did.
watched like 5 freaking soap operas a day,
Yes.
and she recorded them if she wasn't able to watch them. In fact, I remember having to take notes one time because the VCR had broken down.
Wow.
It was crazy. So I really thought my whole life was a soap opera. And so how can you imagine what it was like when I actually went into the world and realized the first time you kiss a boy isn't like, it doesn't look like that in real life. The guy's like, "Why are you kissing me like a fish?" I'm like, "I don't know. That's how they do it on TV." Seriously, I had no idea. Like, my whole life was based on this soap opera,
Yeah.
Fantasyland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And until we actually start comparing or considering what other people are doing, we don't actually know what's actually going on, right? So yeah, our family has quite a bit of control and influence in those ways in our lives. Yeah, so how strange is it that the world isn't a soap opera? Go figure. Yet these things have been on TV for 30, 40, 50 years. My grandmother was an avid watcher as well. Like I remember that being a really big thing with your mom, right? Well, we have to sit down and watch the Young and the Restless because, so and so and so and so. I'm like, my mom would say, you can come back 20 years later and the plot's still pretty much the same, and that bad guy's still around, or he's been dead and now brought him back, ultimately, and how out of reality that
yeah.
really is.
Well, and I remember being afraid to go to your house for dinner. The was one time that we went to your house for dinner, and your dad and you kind of got into it about just a simple word. It was a definition of
Mad and angry.
and I was like, I don't like, how could he decide for you how you were feeling? He's like, I
Because
can't remember.
mad was crazy and angry was angry, right? And I'm like, but I don't know, whatever it was, we fought about it. I do remember
You
that.
did. Yeah. He's like, no, Tanya, no, Tanya, you're not mad, you're angry. And it was a lot of,
And I
but
mean,
his,
here's the truth: is I probably was angry,
you're probably both. Yeah. But it
but I
wasn't,
wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of feeling or being right about that. Forget it. I
but,
fought, man.
but how could he decide for you? Like, that was my thing, was, oh my gosh, like, he's actually telling you how you feel. Like, what
Yeah,
if
but you
you're,
know what? Our parents, we scared our parents
yeah.
because we didn't just get in line, because we didn't just be quiet, because we
Mhm.
didn't just not say anything, because we broke the rules.
And we're still doing that. Yeah.
By talking about it right now,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
somebody that would be breaking the rules, right?
Absolutely.
But I feel so inclined to continue to rattle the cage, break the patterns, step into boldness when it feels scary to do so, and knowing that this isn't your next right step, it's mine, and I
Yes.
get to define what that looks like. And if in fact this is a mistake, as others may see it or call it, um it's my mistake. And I'll
Yeah.
learn whatever it is that I need to learn from it, like everything in my life, right? So
And I don't believe in
oh,
mistakes. I believe in learning. I've really changed my definition on that. That's my judgment, is that it's just learning.
yeah,
And it doesn't have to, nobody has to be in trouble for getting it
I
wrong.
think the dichotomy of, good, bad, and otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Like growing up in a system that said, no, you're wrong if, and that was pretty much everything, didn't make a lot of room
Yeah.
for me and people like me, right?
Yeah.
So in coming to understand there is actually no good and bad, and that I don't
Mhm.
have to judge myself as that. So thank you for that reminder of what if it just is
Yeah.
this?
Just is.
Yeah,
You're
and
just
I don't
looking at it.
label it as negative or positive, good or bad. It's a
Well, yeah.
process.
My mom, in her, in her final month there, she kind of went through a bit of change and stuff like that. But she kept writing, like she kept writing the letter B. And I probably shared this before too, but she just kept writing the letter B. It was on the bathroom wall. She was writing it on her hand. She just kept writing B. And my daughter and I were like, what is she trying to say?
Like, you know,
And
you
then
get
all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, just be. That's it. That's it.
yeah,
Just be.
amazing.
Just like just tea. You
Yeah.
know, it's whole. It's complete.
Well, and that idea that we become conditioned for outside influence because we believe that we need to be that way, right?
Yeah.
And that being becomes secondary to everything else, right? Like I relaxed on Saturday. And yet I had to remind myself it was okay to relax, that I've been working really hard and that I've earned it. Not that I should even have to tell myself that, but I had to keep reminding myself it's okay.
Yeah.
Take a moment, breathe into the place. Relaxing is okay. Rest is part of the deal.
It is. You're an overfunctioner.
I'm an over and it's amazing because I overfunction in so many ways in so many relationships, and there's this expectation of self to do so, or this automatic response, and yet I'm an underfunctioner in some ways too, so I can be both of those things in different relationships. And then my job, I guess, for lack of a better term, would be to recognize where this is serving me and where it is not.
Yes. Amen, sister.
This is Off the Cuff with T and me. That's me, Carol. T.
Thanks for tuning in, you guys, and leave your comments and questions below. Subscribe. We're gonna have a new video coming out every week, so look forward to that. We really enjoy breaking down some of this conversation. I know that this has impacted us in our lives. We're hoping that it has some level of impact and touches your heart in some way. And we're so excited that you joined us and stuck with us all the way to the end. Thank you.
See you next time.